everybody, and welcome to the In the Numbers podcast. I am your host, Jarvis Hall, director of the East Metro STEAM Partnership. We are excited to be here today, coming to you live from the In the Numbers studio. I might have to work on making my album in the back once this is over. I got to call, Puffy or Dr. Dre or whoever's doing stuff these days and work on this album. But until then, we'll keep coming to you live with the In the Numbers podcast. Today's number for the day is 1 million. I wanted to do almost a 1 million, but we're going to go with 1 million. And that is because of our special guest that we have today, Alexis Baghdadi, and she is from OMSI. And OMSI has over 1 million visitors a year come through OMSI. You didn't realize how popular OMSI was, especially until the pandemic hit, and you realize, man, I used to go there a lot. But let's give a big round of applause. We are going to bring in Alexis. Come right on in, give her a big round of applause. Thank you, Alexis, for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you about OMSI and all the things we're doing.
Now, OMSI is doing some great stuff. Now, you took over here recently in this new role, correct?
I'm a project manager.
Recently-ish.
Yeah. I'm a project manager at OMSI. So one of the fun things about my job is I'm constantly working on all different kinds of projects. So one of the new projects that I'm working with in collaborations is collaborating with the STEM hubs. More recently getting more active in what's going on with OMSI around the state and some of our partners in science learning.
Well, tell us just a little bit more about your role and kind of how you got into this.
Sure. My background's in education. I used to be an elementary teacher. I think my heart is in first, second, and third grade oftentimes. And when I transitioned from the classroom into nonprofits, I came into OMSI and have found my way as a project manager. I think all of those skills I had in the classroom of managing, all the different stakeholders and the different activities and work we had going on, it's been really fun to transition that to the museum, where we think about exhibit development or some of our strategic plans around digital learning, partnerships, advancing our equity projects. So in my job at OMSI, I kind of jump day to day, depending on which team I get to work with and which projects we're trying to move forward. My role involves a lot of listening to understand kind of stakeholder priorities in the community or on the staff or at the museum, and then translating that sometimes through ambiguous processes into a project or a program. So I feel like I'm a support, kind of a coach in the same way that I was doing in the classroom.
Well, that is very cool. So I guess the first thing I want to know is what's the cool projects you're working on right now, and don't worry, our audience is very great at keeping secrets. You can tell us about the things you're not really supposed to tell us that are about to come out. You can tell us and we won't tell anybody.
I think one of the most interesting right now is around digital learning. As we all know, with the pandemic, we really quickly had to pivot, and we're leading these much more virtual and digital lives than I know I was leading before the pandemic. And OMSI did an amazing job. Our educators, it feels like almost overnight, took their programming from an in-person hands-on experience and translated it into virtual assemblies and virtual classroom programs. So we've learned a lot during the pandemic, but then we also are asking ourselves questions around what does virtual learning look like in the future when we're all able to be in person and doing all the activities together? How can we still use virtual learning to extend the OMSI experience or increase accessibility to OMSI programming? So that's really exciting to me because I feel like we're moving into this space that is new and different and really creative and imaginative. you in the beginning, it feels like you were referencing Sesame Street. And I feel like that's where my heart is too, is thinking about, PBS and how do they leverage all these different digital channels to engage kids and families and teachers. And so at OMSI, we're kind of asking those questions too. How can we augment our experience with short videos or do-it-yourself activities at home? All these things that would get kids and classes excited about doing science, and then come to the museum or have OMSI come visit and dissect a squid with us, or, so thinking more about those deeper learning experiences rather than that like once a year field trip or once a year assembly. So I'm excited about how creative that is, and where we might go.
No, that's very cool. And I think one thing that's really cool, especially for folks out there, a lot of times, a lot of kids, their first experience with OMSI is often a field trip, but it doesn't have to be their only one. Speaking to as a parent, OMSI has saved me plenty of Saturdays of trying to entertain the youngsters. But there are so much. First, let me make sure, just go all the way back. We're saying OMSI. Want to make sure it's an Oregon Museum of Science and Industry. So if folks have not ever heard of OMSI, if you haven't, we need to have a discussion. If you have not heard of OMSI, see, I'm old school. From the Portland metro area. So my first experience with OMSI was way back when it was in Washington Park OMSI, before it got all cool and fancy over there across from the Climb Center. But that is not the only interaction that your kids can have, or you can have. There are so many really cool things at OMSI. I always recommend getting a membership, and it may seem like it costs a few dollars, but after you take if you have children, you take your kids there a couple of times, it pays for itself, and you can hang out over at the planetarium. There's just so many. I don't want to talk about all the different things, but what are some cool things if somebody went there this weekend coming up, and they're taking their kids because they heard so much about it, and maybe their school isn't taking field trips at this time? What might be some things they would experience there if they came in this weekend?
Well, the first thing I have to plug is our new science playground. I snuck my son in to get a preview, and he was like, "This is my favorite place in the museum." During the pandemic, when we were closed, we went through an entire remodel. So science playground feels brand new. There's a brand new climber. There's an infant area. We have our discovery lab. We brought back the water tables. So there's this beautiful cave that children can go in and play with lights and water and play at the table and just experiment. Get your hands in there and see what happens. So if you have children that are between 0 and 6 years old, that is the first place I would head. We also have a featured exhibit right now, which is on the life of Nelson Mandela. And that exhibit is really engaging to walk through. It starts with a video that gives you an introduction to Nelson Mandela and apartheid in South Africa, and then brings you through his life almost in a chronological order. And there are artifacts and replicas of artifacts on display, and really tells the story of activism in South Africa and Nelson Mandela and his community. Then as you get to the end of that exhibit, there's a local connection. So through partnerships with local organizations and individuals in the Portland metro area, we have developed an extension. So there are profiles of activism in Oregon and how people were a part of the apartheid movement or anti-apartheid movement in Oregon. So there's a lot of Oregon history there. And I personally learned so much about the different people who are helping to build our community here and drive conversations. Then there are also activities there. I think it's called a gumboot stomp. So there's a video where you can learn about music and dance as the role that it plays in activism. And then you get to practice and try. So I kind of loved how they took the story of history and turned it into this interactive full body experience. And one of my big takeaways when I walked through with my family was around the importance of voting. And there are resources there around getting registered to vote and understanding the importance of your vote and your voice. And it really runs through all the ages. So in that same area, there's a whole selection of children's books from early childhood up through around middle school, probably, and really are engaging kids of all ages in that same conversation with their adults. So I would definitely recommend coming to check out our Nelson Mandela exhibit. And then we also in the fall opened our Turban Hall. Turban Hall was closed for, it feels like 18 months because of the pandemic. And now we are able to have it reopened. We have new content in there that is related to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so in partnership with Oregon Mesa and local teens, we have over the past 18 months been developing design challenges that help engage 9 to 14-year-olds and their families in exploring local and global problem solving, trying to understand issues and the role that we all can play in helping to drive change and conversations in our communities locally, but then also participate globally. So the newest one we just opened is on urban heat inequalities, and it looks at extreme heat in cities and then overlays the issues of extreme heat with redlining. So you can look at the maps of Portland and really get a sense of how does the history of Portland impact and racial discrimination impact today, and the climate impacts and the daily lives of kids as they are living in different neighborhoods here. And so there's that connection to history, but then also the design challenge to say, okay, now let's look at a city and what causes extreme heat and how could we design a city differently so that there aren't certain areas of the city that are some of the hottest in the country and then others that have more greenery and are much cooler, and try to engage kids and families in that conversation. We will continue in that space to continue to keep looking at the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And every year or so, there'll be a new topic. And with the same format, engage families in a design challenge to explore different issues. So those,
fantastic.
I think,
No, those are great right there. Sorry, it took me a quick second to find the button because I don't like to.
Oh.
I try to kind of mute myself a little bit when you're talking, because then I'm like, sometimes I have little ad libs. I'm like, or my breathing or something, or if I sneeze, I'm like, I don't want to mess up her train of thought. So then I'm like about to start talking. I'm like, oh, I got to find the mute button. But it'll be a quick second because I want to come back to some of that you just shared. I got to take a quick second and do a sponsor read, because this episode of In the Numbers podcast is sponsored by the East Metro STEAM Foundation, which actually works with the East Metro STEAM Partnership to raise money for STEM and STEAM education and other related services in East Multnomah County. You can learn more about the East Metro STEAM Foundation and make a donation today by visiting the East Metro STEAM Partnership website, which is eastmetrosteam.org, and click on Foundation, and you can learn more about how you can financially support STEAM in East County. And so as we move towards the holiday time, if you need to make a donation, you have a few dollars hanging in your pocket and you want to make something tax deductible to a 501c3, we know you're going to give to OMSI, but we know you can also give to the East Metro STEAM Foundation. Again, that's eastmetrosteam.org, and click on Foundation. All right. One thing that, and we're here with Alexis Baghdadi from OMSI, the program manager, right?
Project manager.
Yeah. Project manager. Sooner or later, she's about to be in charge of this thing. I know I can't throw that stuff out there. I'll get in trouble. But we're working on that. But one thing that is interesting that you brought up around some of the newer exhibits. Uh, and we're seeing this, politics is playing out as politics always does. And some of this has even crept into Oregon around critical race theory, which is not taught in schools. Let me put myself on the full screen here to tell everybody, critical race theory is not being taught in not only any K through 12, it's likely not taught in any undergraduate program, and is only taught in law school and graduate programs as a framework for discussing law and law development and policy development in America. It is not telling your kids that they're bad people inherently. Is not doing that. So if you have a problem with it, go to your local grad school. So go to, one of the universities in Oregon and get mad at them. Don't go to your school board and say, you're teaching CRT to our kids. They're not teaching. Trust me. Okay, let me have to get on my soapbox for a quick moment. Apologize for that one. It's just, as somebody who's in grad school, I feel it's intellectually dishonest for folks to run on the school board to try to ban something, as well as it bugs me that the reason that they say they want to ban all it's Marxists or it's this. You're not banning Marx. There's not one person who ever went to a school board meeting and said we need to ban feminist theory from schools, because they're definitely not teaching that in kindergarten. They're not reading bell hooks in kindergarten or anything. But CRTs, we can't teach kids about this at all. We need to teach them about the Constitution, because of course race was nowhere in the Constitution. No such thing as a 3/5 compromise. But I'm stop. I'm done. But I do find it interesting that you all don't run from any of those things. When you're talking about the city design stuff and redlining and those things, that was part of Portland's history. When looking at how we design this city, and we can't even look at things around environmental justice without bringing some of those things up. Especially because those are the areas, especially where people of color traditionally not only were living but had to live, because those were the policies of the state of Oregon and the city of Portland specifically. And now we see those areas happen to be where the wastewater treatment plants are, where the substations are, where those kind of things. When we're looking at city design and stuff, we can't do that in a vacuum without looking at those impacts. And so have you all met any resistance to some of those things, or has it been kind of more supportive as more educators kind of around it? I was curious about that piece.
I've only heard supportive things. I have not heard any resistance. I agree with you. I've been tracking the same conversation locally and nationally around, critical race theory is not even the right phrase, right? As you said, like looking at how are we telling stories and being factual. And OMSI hasn't encountered any of that pushback. As a staff member, it's been easy is not the right word maybe, but I have confidence in moving forward with a curriculum that might be considered quote unquote controversial in other areas, because I know what OMSI's values are. And I know the things that we're trying to, how we're trying to evolve and what we're trying to put forward. So we are really focused on building a welcoming, inclusive space, looking at all the different ways that we can be accessible. And part of that has to be the content and being true about the stories and the way that we're telling and teaching the science. I think that you can't look at science in a neutral way, that you have to look at the impacts and who's contributing to it, or all the different experiences that are a part of that science that you're putting forward. So if I'm just talking about urban heat, sure, I can just talk about temperatures and I can talk about materials, but that's really leaving out a whole part of what's going on. And I think that science asks us to look at the context. And so we're excited to do that as we develop content. The other thing that's really important to me, I guess, is the idea that this isn't a conversation just for high schoolers or just for adults. There are so many ways that middle school and elementary school, and even the youngest preschoolers, can be engaged in talking about the content from different angles, talking about fairness and justice and the consequences. So I'm excited that in our spaces, we're being able to do that, particularly in the Turbine Hall with the global goals.
And I think one thing I've always appreciated about OMSI is the local context to a lot of the stuff. So you talk about how with the Mandela exhibit, which I definitely need to check out, there's that local connection there, and folks who have done things. And I think I always appreciated that, even with things like the water piece. You know, we in exhibits in the past as well, we've talked about the Vanport flood and how that impacted the area, and you know, as it still does. We have that connection out in East County because our what is it called? The levee had to be recertified. And so it was this whole big thing. It's like, wait a second, we might not get certification. What was that? What does that mean? And you know, if there was a flood in East County, what that would look like, or what that would do to the Troutdale Airport, or some of those other places, or businesses that would have to move because they couldn't get flood insurance because the levee wasn't safe enough, and then made people think about Vanport and what that did to displace a lot of people and those type of things. But I've always appreciated that local context and stuff. So it's not just science and abstract. There's a real connection to everything that happens at OMSI, and that's one thing I've greatly appreciated. But I do have to ask this question because it's important. When is the body exhibit coming back? Because I need to know this, because the last time it was here, I missed it, and I need the body exhibit back so I can have some fun and maybe scare some of my kids. But no, I always appreciated the body exhibit. Any idea on when that might be rotating?
I don't know. It was just here, unfortunately.
Oh, I missed it.
You missed it. I'm not going to remember when it opened, but I know that one of the exhibits that we had during the pandemic, kind of open closure time, was the body exhibit.
Oh,
so,
see, I
years.
definitely. Now, normally, because you know, I'm a member, I usually get all the stuff. So I usually don't miss anything like that. You know, I didn't miss the dinosaur exhibit. My son would have killed me. He is 7 and in love with dinosaurs, like everything dinosaur he's pumped up. So, you know, I definitely didn't miss the Pixar exhibit. Went to that a few times. The kids really enjoyed that. I didn't miss what was the insect one?
Oh, exquisite creatures.
Oh, exquisite creatures, fantastic.
Oh,
The colors on all the insects, and you know, even watching that video beforehand for that one was interesting. One, the first thing I thought was, I couldn't do that job. So
no way.
You know, he's like hanging out in these exotic places for like years to capture all these different species of creatures. I'm like, nah. I like looking at the exhibit. I ain't going there. You know, it's like, yeah, we're here. We're checking out. Nope. I'll be at the resort. You tell me how it went. But that one we had a good time with, even though my son, for the most part, he always kind of stayed in the Turbine Hall place, just because he enjoyed the water, so he would just hang out there mostly. But there's also, isn't there the Natural Science Hall as well? I don't think we talked much about that part.
For sure. The Natural Sciences Hall has two of my favorite places in OMSI, and one of the reasons that OMSI is pretty unique compared to other science centers is that we have these two labs up there. So we have the life sciences and the paleontology lab. So I don't know if your son has been to the paleontology lab, but this is one of the secrets. It's upstairs in the top corner, and the volunteers and the educators that work in there are just I am so impressed with their knowledge and their way to connect with kids. Almost every time I'm up there, you'll see a kid come in with a rock and they'll be like, I found a fossil. And then the educators will engage them in an entire conversation around, what is this rock and is it a fossil or not? And how do you know? I think it's a triceratops up there. So if you do a reserve lab with your class, or I think if you come to summer camp, then you have the opportunity to help work on the triceratops and help to uncover it. The other lab space that's up there is the life sciences. So you get to be up close and look at the different insects and the animals that are up there. So I know I end up, when I come with family and friends, we spend a lot of time in that space, checking out the walking sticks. And I think it's called an axolotl, which apparently is a character or something in Minecraft. So it's attracted a lot of 7, 8, and 9-year-olds.
Oh, it's Minecraft. Oh, trust me. Yeah, that's when I learned certain stuff just wasn't for me. I don't get Minecraft. I don't. And I'm trying to get it, between Minecraft and then between Roblox. Like my kids love it. And I don't get it. But then I start thinking about when I was their age. And like, I still remember when the Game Boy came out and I had like Tetris. They're like, why are you playing this thing for hours? Like, I could play Tetris for hours back then. Like, if you give it to me now, I could play it for like 5 minutes. And I'm like, okay, I'm done with this. But then I was all in on, Tetris and Mario Brothers and all those stuff with the Nintendo. Then when the Genesis came out, that was a thing. But I don't get it. But they love Roblox. And my daughter who's 9, she loves the Life Lab. So that's her favorite. She loves the insects and the animals. I think there was it wasn't a mouse in there, but it was something similar. Rats. Yeah. And so they know that their mother hates rats. And so we took a video of that and sent it to their mom, and we're like, hey, we're bringing this home. And she was it was a fun joke to play, but they loved that part. Yeah, he was interested a little bit in the fossils. He got more into the life room because stuff was moving around. So and for some reason they think the first time I took them, they thought it was kind of like a pet store. So they're like, oh, you can take this one home. I'm like, it doesn't work that way. You come see them. We don't get to take them. But I do think it's really cool, especially for the teachers that are watching this, to know that, if your school is allowing field trips at this time, you can reserve one of those rooms and you can have some extended time in that particular area, depending on what you're working on. And there's volunteers to help with that curriculum and other things that can go along with that day. So there's some really good opportunities for teachers to go a little bit deeper in those life sciences or those physical sciences, as well as the Earth Lab. There's so much cool stuff there that, like I said, I take my kids there as a Saturday. We just book out the whole Saturday and just hang out. We usually start in the whatever's the main exhibit, and then we'll have some time in the planetarium. We'll have some time at the movie, and we just make it a whole day. But teachers, you can also book out this and reserve it. I highly recommend that you do it. Man, I just can't say enough great things about OMSI. I'm just mad I missed the body exhibit during COVID, so I have to wait yet again.
Yeah, it's a little while. Thanks for the plugs, though.
For this to come back, I do that part is. I'm like, man, I just knew the body was coming up. Like, man, the body is about to come up. And I'm really excited about some of your digital offerings. I think that's really it's really an opportunity, especially for teachers, to encourage some access to some of this stuff. I know a lot of folks kind of increased their capacity for digital things during the pandemic. Everybody's been happy to kind of move back to kind of traditional in person, but that doesn't mean we have to leave that digital space. as we go back. So there's a lot of opportunities there uh, for interaction in that digital space. You don't necessarily have to come to the center. But I appreciate that. Are any other new digital offerings coming out that we should be on the lookout for?
Right now, we are offering virtual labs. So if schools are restricted on doing field trips or having externals into the building, then you can set up a virtual lab, and then it's through Zoom basically, that then an OMSI educator will engage your class in project and learning. There also are assemblies that are done in a similar way. So then your class can interact and ask questions and really dive into some of the content. On OMSI.edu, we have our OMSI at home content, which is like do it yourself. That is great for schools, that teachers can pull activities and short video explanations and demonstrations, but they're also great for home. So I know that when I was looking for like a rainy day activity to do with my family, we can pull up a short video and it's kind of engineering design challenges, and we can play around with the random supplies that we have in our house and try and test out designs. I think the other day we were working on boats and trying to design certain boats and get a sense of like, how many pennies can I put in this boat before it sinks? So it's fun to kind of do that trial and error and discovery together. Right now, those I think are our main virtual content or digital content that we're offering. And really we're interested in exploring what else would be meaningful to teachers and to classrooms, and what else would be meaningful to families. So hopefully we're going to do a lot of testing and experimenting in the next year to create some new content too.
One thing I did want to make sure is that's the great part about, our audio audience won't be able to hear this, but or be able to see this. But for those on video, as Alexis shared before, go to omsi.edu. You could click on the school and group programs tab, and you can see the really cool things right here. You can explore, there's a button here to explore virtual programs. You can explore the in-person programs. So it gives you an opportunity to check out some of those things. Right there, she talked about science at home. So you can click right here on science at home, and don't laugh at my 8 million tabs that I have open. So don't even notice that at all. And you can see weekly science at home. So these are some really cool things. So there's a week, the last week was phenology. And I think I'm saying that right. It's phenology, right?
I think so.
Ways you can continue to engage as a scientist citizen. So you click on, you'll click on that and it'll tell you what you have going on for this particular week. And it's really, I'll go right ahead.
Some of the great things I'd call out about our science at home, or all of our OMSI content, but we are NGSS aligned. So we really do try and keep track of the standards and figuring out how to connect hands-on activities with the content that teachers are aligning in their classroom and advancing with NGSS. The other thing that's great about our science at home content is that we are integrating subject areas. So you'll see that there are some literacy-based activities. There are design challenges. I saw there is some math around data and graphing. So really we're trying to be interdisciplinary because we know your time is limited. So how can we work on a couple different skill areas and subject areas at the same time?
And these are great. Educators can use these, even though it says at home, educators can use them in the classroom, parents, if you're looking for some extra things for your students. This one's really cool here, sports science, and it gives you a week of things to do. So on Monday, it says here, science reading, the science of exercise. And it gives you some things about sports exercise, their discussion questions that can be here. And then Tuesday gives you an activity, DIY test your reaction time. And it comes with a worksheet, which you could click on, and it gives you things to do in that particular worksheet. Wednesday, career connection, a day in the life of a physical therapist. And it gives you some information here. You step in to watch a video that talks about the life of a physical therapist and has some discovery questions. Thursday, observation journalism, journaling, and you'll be observing balance. And it gives you some questions and some things to do along with that. And then Friday is a design challenge. Okay, design an exercise routine. All right, so you get all these things in a week, and this is information that's why we'll work on that one. But you can hear me though, correct?
Yeah, now it's perfect.
Okay, great. What I was saying in regards to that was this information that I just clicked you. There's, as of right now, there are 30 weeks of weekly science at home content that is out, and that stuff that's free. That's on the website. It's there. Like, you didn't know. Yes, I'm a member, but you don't have to be a member to get that. Your school district didn't have to, purchase you a a pass or a membership, or you get that a lot with a lot of content that's out there. They say, hey, we have all this cool stuff that you can use, but you have to pay for a member. This content is there right now. So you can be using this in your class. Like Alexis said, it's NGSS. For those who aren't teachers, who have no idea what NGSS is, please don't go to your school boards and protest NGSS. It is not it is not something controversial. So, but it is aligned with that. So you can connect those things to those standards, and you can even adapt those lessons for your classroom. And I think that they're fantastic handouts, videos. They really produced a lot of really good stuff there. So sorry for the audio audience, didn't get a chance to see that, but if you missed it, definitely go to omsi.edu, and then you can click on from there. As I stated, just click on the school and group programs. You get all that information right there. And then teachers, you can feel free to click there to learn about the not only other virtual programs, but the in-person programs and how those work. And also, if you are an educator, I believe you can get a discount on the membership. I think there's educator membership discounts for educators. So don't be afraid to go ahead and get that as well. I know I'm telling everybody to get memberships and stuff, but and no, I'm not. Oh, go ahead.
Well, we have an amazing program sales department. And so any questions you have, just give them a call and they will help you access all kinds of educator resources and discounts, access to the museum, special programs. When I was a teacher, one thing I didn't realize how much OMSI had, and didn't realize how much they work with educators to really find the programming and the type of experience that works for your kids. So I definitely encourage anybody to just give us a call to learn about what might be the right thing for your class.
I was going to say, for the record, I do not work for the sales department. I'm
you do
not
sound
paid.
like it, though.
I'm not paid in any way. I don't get a commission from new memberships in East County to OMSI. I don't. Really, I've just always been one as a kid. I used to love OMSI, and I used to just love going to the planetarium. Was always a cool thing for me, and it's been really cool to share that with my kids. And even my son is so pumped up, and he always says he wants to be a experimental scientist, and he wants to create a formula that makes people fly and stuff. And at first I was going to tell him, hey man, you can't do that, but then I started thinking, who says he can't do that? So I try not to. Sometimes with kids, we kind of we're so in a hurry to kind of tell them the truth or rain on their parade that we stifle their creativity. So if that's what you want to do, hey, learn as much science as possible. If you want to create the what did they call I don't know if you remember that old cartoon Gummy Bears, but they had like gummy berry juice and they would bounce up and down if they had the juice. I'm like, hey, I can watch Harry Potter and he has an invisibility cloak, why can't someone create something that lets people fly? So, but one thing I found interesting about that is even at 7, he's still thinking about the ethical questions that come along with that. So he was like, hey, if I create this, maybe everybody can't have it because, this might be a problem here. And I'm like, man, that's, interesting to think about that
That's
a
the way to do
7-year-old
it,
can,
right?
that 7-year-olds have those kind of thoughts and questions and things. Sometimes we always, oh, they're little kids, they don't know much, but you'll be surprised what just exposing them to different things can do. And I think, especially for my son, on top of, even before going to OMSI, during the pandemic, their schools gave out some supplies, and his teacher gave him a magnifying glass, and that was just the coolest thing for him. He saw the magnifying glass, they watched the video, and he wanted a lab coat, and he wanted to just go around with this magnifying glass looking at things. And it just really created that sense of wonder. And oftentimes that's what spurs, young people into engineering, into science, into stuff, just that sense of wonder. And I've always appreciated that that's what OMSI brings to folks. I want to come back and ask you a few things. We want to take a quick pause really quickly to say, again, this episode of In the Numbers podcast is sponsored by the East Metro STEAM Foundation. Now, I know you're used to the East Metro STEAM partnership, but the East Metro STEAM Foundation is committed to raising money to help support STEAM in East Monoma County and make sure that the most underrepresented communities have access to STEAM and STEAM resources. For you to donate today, feel free to go to the East Metro STEAM Partnership website, eastmetrosteam.org, click on Foundation, and there you can donate today. So you can make a tax-deductible donation. It is a 501c3 entity. If you want to know if your gift is fully tax-deductible, please make sure you consult your tax professional. Don't call me because I'm not your tax professional. But feel free to make your donation either way. Again, that's eastmetrosteam.org and click on Foundation. We're still back here with Alexis Baghdadi. We're getting close to the end. I'm telling you, an hour goes by really quickly, but we're getting close there. But I did want to talk a little bit, as much as I've been, so people don't think I'm just an OMSI homer, which I am. I love what you're doing there. But I do want to talk about like what more made you kind of come out of the classroom, because we do talk on here about personal choices, and a lot of times we're and I think we do a disservice to kids sometimes, where we don't talk about ourselves enough, and I think part of that is to kind of keep people at arm's length. So I get that piece, but I remember for years ago, I used to work for the city of Portland. I used to work in HR, and we would have the it wasn't the bring your daughter to work day. It was kind of I think it was Portland Public would tour city stuff, kind of like a job fairish type thing, but they kind of, spend a day in the life. And so kids would come in and they're like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm here, I'm in HR, but they're like, you just sit in the cubicle all day? I'm like, well, yeah, but well, what do you do? I'm like, well, I read these applications. And they're like, you just sit and read all day? Like, huh. Now, of course, the firefighters, everybody wanted to go by there. They get to play with the hose and stuff and see them slide down the pole. And, even the police officer, people liked police. That was fun. Nobody wanted to come and hang out at the HR area. But one, I enjoyed that particular work because it helped people get jobs. And so, I like that piece of the thing, but we really couldn't share that with folks because they just didn't want to know what you did. And we don't often share how we make decisions to how we get to where we've gotten. And so you're a classroom teacher, and I'm sure you were enjoying it. But what made you think, you know what, I'm gonna go hang out at this OMSI place and make sure this body exhibit is there for Jarvez when he's ready
to take care of you. Um, my childhood was very much in and around grassroots nonprofits. I come from a family where we couldn't pay for day camp or a babysitter that often. So I followed my mom around. So my earliest memories are kind of following my mom from board meetings to programs and serving people. And I think I was incredibly fortunate in that I get to watch how do you support a community? How do you build an organization and collaborate with people so that you're meeting people's needs? And so there's something there that feels very linked to my family around, this type of work I was interested in. So I went into the schools because I thought that's a great place to get. I'm fascinated by the ways that people learn and the way that kids construct knowledge together and what that looks like when you're with your family. But as I was a classroom teacher, my brain kept going off into like, oh, but what about the after school program we could organize? Oh, but what about the big community events and strategies? And how do we build culture here at the school? So I kept finding that my brain was going back to all the things I observed when I was a child and trying to bring those into the community kind of on a larger scale outside the classroom. So after my son was born, I needed to take a little bit of time off of work and help manage that and take care of him. And as I was looking to return back to work after being a stay-at-home mom for a few years, I was thinking about, okay, what is this space that's an intersection of education and community? What's a role that I could have that feels a little bit around, I love planning and brainstorming and really being creative. So as a project manager, I kind of find in this role, I get to do all of those things. So there are things I miss about the classroom. I think there's this way that you form really direct, close relationships when you are building a classroom community. But now I'm looking at, okay, how do I do that with adults? And how am I doing that here with the OMSI staff? So I don't know. That's kind of how I found my way out of the classroom, looking to explore something a little bit different that was pulling all of these different aspects together.
No, that's really cool right there. I understand how that was. Like, I grew up in, like I said, for me, OMSI was like such a, it was either I never went with my family. It was a school trips. That's the only time I ever got to go. And then as I got older, I wanted to make sure I gave that experience to my kids. Plus, kids give you an excuse to do stuff that folks look at you a little different if you're going by yourself. Like, like I was excited about the Pixar exhibit, but you have to bring the kids. So like, why are you getting excited about Pixar? I'm like, from a just the technology of what they were creating at Pixar at the time was unprecedented. Like, it wasn't seen as really it was the first real kind of digital animation on a feature film. Toy Story changed filmmaking, and like to see how that process comes about and to see the marriage of art and science is exciting. Now, I'm kind of geeky in that manner. And I think one thing I appreciate you bringing up today was context, in that a lot of people think, one, they don't understand that social science is a science. So the way we connect, the way we talk, the way we interact with each other is a science that is actually studied. And I think sometimes, when I think, even us in the STEM areas have this issue sometimes. We try to put the hard science, as they call it, which I hate that term. And then the other stuff, oh, that's just the soft science.
Mhm.
This is, this is chemistry. This is real science. That's sociology. That's not real science. That psychology is not real science. One, it is real science. It is the fact that people spend a lot of money to learn it. Not only learn it, but to profit off of it is shows you that it's a real science. But all this stuff, and that's why we're all the STEM hubs in Oregon they're all STEM hubs but we decided to be a STEAM
Mhm.
a STEAM partnership, because we had to put the arts in there, because that's what brings it context.
Yeah.
You know, it's not enough to know that this element reacts with this element. It's how does that reaction do something? You know, what is going to happen with that? How can we use that to help, you know, something over here, or you know, what are we doing as a piece when we're looking at climate change? It's not just, hey, are we going to stop polluting? You know, that sounds easy, but you know, are we going to stop? I mean, cars pollute. Everybody going to stop cars? We're
Social
probably
change,
not going to
right?
stop the cars right now. So it's like, okay, how do we have carbon offsets? How do we have reduction? How do we build other systems? How do we change maybe how we're doing certain things as humans to actually offset that? And even some of the conversations around the new kind of the I-5 change right around close to OMSI, you know, over there in the Albina area, having those kind of conversations about the school that's there and how much pollution they're getting just in the school because of the freeway being right there.
Yeah.
And, you know, you'd be surprised at those kind of things, but it takes science to understand the context for it to be the most impactful. And that's one thing I appreciate about OMSI. The other thing I appreciate about, you know, you tell your story, and I appreciate you sharing that with us, how you kind of made this transition over here into the nonprofit space. And I'm sure you missed the classroom. I don't know any teacher who doesn't miss the classroom when they're out. My family were educators. My uncle, who is similar to being my dad in a sense, he's been a teacher for 20 years. His best friends are educators. My kid's mother is a teacher. Like everybody I'm around, like all these teachers. And I was this close to going into teaching at the time. I do teach now at the university level. That way I can speak freely on critical race theory. No, I'm just playing. But you know, I do teach business in the college context. But I had almost, if I wouldn't have got back into business, I was this close to getting in the education program at Oregon State. They were talking to me, and I was having some difficulties in undergrad in business at first. So I was like, I could go over to education, and I was like, nah, let me stay over in business. I'm having too much fun. And then go figure, I'm back here in education because it matters so much. It is the key to a lot of what we hope to unlock as a society is through education. And I am glad that that OMSI was able to hang on. I was sad to hear that the Children's Museum didn't make it. That was kind of my weekend twofer. You know, one day Children's Museum, one day OMSI.
Yeah.
But you know, the fact that those spaces, you know, were threatened during the pandemic, we started to really see the value of those things. We started to see the value of people actually being there to physically touch stuff and how impactful that is for kids. But before we go, because we're getting close to the time, we talked a lot about education, what it is for the kids and everything else. But I would be remiss if I wouldn't throw out there that you know, the kids do have a bedtime, and there is OMSI After Dark.
I was gonna say, you said you came to Pixar for your kids, and I was like, wait, we have all kinds of adult programs.
oh, trust me. Like I said, we talked about the kids stuff, talked about education, talked about science, NGSS standards. So teachers, we met all your stuff that you need for the teaching stuff. Now that the kids are in bed, let's talk a little bit about OMSI After Dark, because I think OMSI After Dark is a really cool program. One, you know, you don't have to stop learning as an adult. I'm excited to see the Leica stuff. I think that's coming at the end of the month.
It's here right now.
Oh, it's here now?
Thank you for the reminder. Yeah, let's talk about cool things for grown-ups.
Yeah, let's talk about
We
it.
are right now hosting, we've just extended, so I think you have to come by Thanksgiving. There is a little mini Leica exhibit, and I love puppets and costumes and things like that. So it captivated me. There are artifacts, examples from the different films, and then there are QR codes at each of the exhibit stations where you're with your phone, you can scan it, and then there'll be an interview or a talk about the artifact that's there, or it'll show you how it was created and then what does it look like in the film. So I definitely encourage everyone to come check that out. It's included with your general admission to the museum, and it's only here for a little while. And then we are hosting next week, very soon, our first in-person OMSI After Dark in a really long time. So our teams are very excited to welcome the OMSI After Dark crowd back to the museum. And then we're planning to continue having them throughout the year. So keep an eye on our website to get your tickets in advance. I'm not even sure if this one might be sold out already.
Oh, is it sold out? Well,
I don't know. You have to check.
Definitely go to the website. It is OMSI. It's omsi.edu/after dark. Now, this is not for the children, so make sure you got your babysitter or take them over to grandma's house or something like that. It is 21 and over only. Okay, it is called Uncorked. And it is 21 and over. It's on November 12th from 6 to 10. November 12th, 6 to 10. It is the annual wine tasting. You can sample a lot of delicious wines in Oregon. And for the record, so nobody's saying I'm out promoting alcohol. Alcohol is science. Okay.
Oh, come
First off,
winemaking.
if you go, one of the most popular programs at Oregon State is around the fermenting. So this is big in Oregon. It's what we do here. So feel free to check that out. If you're not able to get into this one, as it may be sold out.
Get your tickets fast before.
But you got to get them fast. There's limited stuff available. There will be some food there. I think there's going to be a food truck there as well. There's opportunities to check out the exhibits with no children around. So you can have fun and your kids don't have to see you having as much fun as you want to pretend that you don't already have. So if you haven't been to one, they're fantastic. I know, yes, y'all think I work for OMSI now. I don't. There's so much that stuff that's in the city that's really cool that a lot of folks don't experience. So if you're into wine tasting, feel free to check it out. And there's often some other demonstrations that are going to be there this time. There is cork fingers. There's water to wine, talking about the science of that. Brick house, using light to determine how sweet the wine is. And then Native American harvest and learning how indigenous planting practices take advantages of symbiosis. So yes, there's a little wine there. You can get a little tipsy, but remember, drink responsibly and always get a designated driver. Or you can take the Max to OMSI, get you right there as well. But it's a really good time and environment to learn. It's all about creating an environment of lifelong learning. We do it for the kids, and I'm sure that's Alex's role. That's my role. We talk a lot about stuff for the kids, but I learn so much every time I'm doing some of these things, and it's all about lifelong learning. And you can have fun at OMSI and learn. So definitely check out After Dark. That's omsi.edu/After Dark. I don't know why I can't talk some reason right now. I guess my sound went off and messed up my whole thing. But any last word? We're coming up at an hour, so any any last words you want to say to the people? Anything you want them to remember or to think about at all?
I think one of the big things that you touched on before is that, OMSI is about the lifelong learning and the love of quote unquote science. I think when I came to OMSI, I was like, I don't really do science, or I'm not a scientist. I'm not really good at math. And one of the big things that we hope to engage everyone in and help everyone think about, and I definitely have benefited from this, is the idea that we do science every day. And there are so many different ways that I can be a design thinker or an engineer as I am planning out a project or working with my family. And so we invite everybody to just come check out some of our content, whether, as you were talking about before, Jarvez, it's the hard science of chemistry and come do a chemistry experiment, or it's more around some of the softer sides, that's like critical thinking and making those connections and understanding context to ask the questions and understand how pieces fit together and affect each other. We run a science hub program, and there's a lot. Every time we have one of those events, it's helping to engage all of us and asking those kinds of questions around different issues or topics in our community. So I don't know. I just encourage everyone to come check it out, whether it's with your family or with your friends, and kind of play in this space of wonder and curiosity and discovery.
Okay, well, everybody give Alexis a big round of applause. Thank you so much. I know it took us a second. We've been scheduling this for a bit, but I am glad that we got you to come on, and especially glad that we got you as a partner. And even though you don't know it yet, but you're going to be taking Ben's place on our leadership team. So we're excited for that one. That's how I con people. I get them on the podcast, and then I let them know that they're on a leadership team or an action team. So we appreciate your participation at that, and definitely look forward to seeing you at the next meeting. Now, if the body exhibit comes back and I don't get a direct email from you personally, yes, I need a personal call.
Don't worry.
I need to know beforehand so I can be there day one. I'm not missing it this time. But thank you so much for everything. Thank you for being here. Remember, everyone, that this episode, the number of the day is 1 million, because over 1 million people are being served by OMSI a year. Get your membership, get your students there, be a part of the 1 million as everything is starting to open back up here at OMSI here in 2021, 2022. So thank you, Alexis, for being here. Thank you for OMSI for what you're doing. Continue to do what you do. And thank all of you for coming in and joining us for this latest episode of In the Numbers podcast. So make sure you're getting your kids supporting STEM. Make sure you're hanging out with us at eastmetrosteam.org, and make sure to always stay in the numbers. Thank you very much.